we need to look at configure role-based access control. Some of it we have already seen. You assign different roles at different levels. Based on the roles that you assign at those levels, you will have different level of access assigned to the users. So let me move this over here. Now, if you want to assign role-based access control, what it basically means is different people have different roles in the company. So if you're working as a HR, you'll have different roles in the company. If you're working in IT team, you'll find different roles assigned to you. If you're in IT department, let's say you're working on databases, you will be assigned a role called database administrator or DBA. If you're working, let's say, for server management, you might be assigned sysop role, system operations role. Okay, this role can be assigned to you. If you are someone else, let's say you're working, basically you are the person who's managing all the Azure environment, you'll be assigned global administrator role at a Azure Active Directory level. If let's say you're managing all of your subscriptions, you'll be assigned owner role at a subscription. So based on the role of yours in the company, you'll be assigned different level of access. So if you're a normal user, you can't change much things about your Windows system, right? So you cannot modify, let's say, the IP assigned to it, or you cannot change the computer name assigned to it. So if you're basically a part of, organization where you have different roles assigned to different people, the roles that are assigned to your identity will determine what level of access you have. So if you are an administrator, you will be able to control most of the things related to admin activities. So if I go to the next page, you see the agenda for all RBAC controls. So we are going to understand how you can implement RBAC, how you can create a role definition, how you work with role assignment, what are the different types of roles you can get, both in Azure subscription level, which are called as Azure RBAC roles, or you can get different types of role in Azure AD, which are basically the Azure Active Directory roles that you can assign. So based on these types of roles, you'll have different permissions assigned to you. We'll also look at Azure RBAC authentication, how you authenticate using RBAC, and determine different Azure RBAC roles that can be assigned. So we'll talk about role-based access control in this entire module. How do you implement role-based access control? It basically, what is RBAC? It provides fine-grained access management of resources in Azure. So based on the role that is assigned to you, you will be able to configure different resources accordingly. There are built-in roles available to you. So some roles are built in with Microsoft platform. You're not modifying or you're not changing any of these things. These are available to you by default. You can do segregation of your duties by assigning different type of role to different people. So if someone is working in HR department, you will assign them different role. If someone is working as a DBA, they will be assigned different role. If someone is working as an app developer, they will be assigned app developer role. So based on the role that they are working in, they will be assigned different level of access. Grant only the amount of access to the users that is needed to perform their job. This is known as privilege of least permission, principle of least permission, or you can say principle of least privilege or principle of least permission. Basically, you are only assigning the role which are essential for a user to do their task. Nothing more, nothing less. You do not want every user to have global administrator access. Maybe some user might accidentally delete anything within your environment. You only want to assign certain level of access boundary so that that user is able to perform all the operations assigned to them. So you have different type of concepts that you need to understand when you're talking about RBAC. First concept is called as security principle. Any object that represents something that is requesting access to a resource, anything that is requesting access, it can be a user, it can be a group, it can be a service account, it can be anything which is currently requesting access to a resource. Then you have role definition. Role definition is nothing but bundle of permissions. So you group multiple permissions together and you create role definition. It lists the operation that can be performed on this level. Scope, boundary for the level of access that is requested. So it defines what level of scope you are applying the role at. So you might be applying the scope at a manual group level, or at a subscription level, or at a resource group level, or at a resource level. If you apply a role at a resource group level, the person will only be able to see and modify settings related to that resource group level. They will not be able to change, modify, or do anything with any other level. Assignment, where you are assigning the role. So basically you can assign a role at different levels, attaching a role definition to a security principle which becomes your assignment. User can grant access described in a role definition by creating an assignment. So you're creating assignment. Basically, whenever you attach a role to a user or any other service principle, that becomes your assignment. So security principle, basically anything which is requesting access to a resource. Role is a bundle of permissions that are grouped together. Scope is at different boundaries that you're applying the role at. And then you have assignments. You're assigning a role to a user or a service principal or any other level. That becomes your assignment. You have different type of assignment. You can have allow assignment or deny assignment. Deny assignment basically means it is going to deny you to do something. So you might want that certain users should not be able to create any resource within your environment. Then you can add those resources under deny assignment, and they will not be able to deploy any resources in your environment. So you do have this deny assignment option also available to you. Looking at a role, if you want to dissect how a role is built, so basically it is also following the similar JSON template that I talked about. So it is using a language called JavaScript object notation. JavaScript object notation. In a role definition, so when you are creating a new role, either you can use a Microsoft role, which is provided by Microsoft and called as built-in role, or you can use or create a role which is created by you. So you are defining custom settings for a role, that becomes your custom role over here. So in order for you, when you're creating or using any of these roles, every role that you're assigning has different level of actions and not actions that they can do. So action basically defines what all permissions or what all things they can do within your whatever scope you're defining it at. So let's say these all are subscription level things that you can do. So all of these roles that you see, these are assigned basically at a subscription level. Owner has the highest privilege, so they will only have this block over here. So they can do everything. Okay, they can do everything. Whereas if you see for contributor, this is the second role that you usually see when you're assigning it. This can do everything within your environment. First option it is showing you over here. Not action, it is defining what they cannot do. They cannot delete any authorization for any other user. This user cannot delete any role for owner. So they cannot change or modify any role of owner. So they cannot delete any owner roles. They cannot make any modification or write anything or change anything related to owners, and for other admins as well. So these users who have been assigned contributor role, they cannot do anything related to authorization. That is, they cannot change permission of users, and you're not allowing them to elevate their access. So when you're authenticating or you're assigning different roles, you're not allowing this role to elevate their permission to change anything related to any other admin. Okay, so it can perform everything, but they cannot assign permissions to other users. That is what it means when you talk about actions and not actions. Then you also have data actions. So if you are working in data, or if you're working on anything within Azure, let's say you are creating new security keys, will you be able to see the keys or not? So right now over here you don't see anything defined. Basically, if this user creates new keys, they will be able to control details related to those keys. So you define different actions, not actions, and data actions. Based on these things, you will see different level of access for a role assigned over here. So then you also have custom role. If you want to create custom role using portal, you first need to enable a license called P2 license. I've talked about this Azure ID P2 license in yesterday's session. I think once you look at the recording, you will be able to understand that part as well. So basically you need to assign a license, and once you assign that license, only then you will be able to configure this custom role definition through the portal. I'll show this in the demo as well. So you define a role definition, then you assign the role. So once you have created the role definition, then you are basically following this process. The process of binding a role definition to a user, group, or a security principal at a scope for the purpose of granting access is called as role assignment. So the first step that you see in this is you basically assign a role to different levels, either a user or to a group or a service principal. Then you need to look at what role definition you want to attach it to different users. Okay, so do you want to attach owner role to a user? Do you want to attach contributor role to a user? It will depend on what role of theirs is there in the organization. So if they are an owner, they are working on everything within the department, then you are going to assign them the highest privilege, that is owner. If they are only working as a backup operator, or they are working only for backing up your workloads, then you're going to assign them backup operator role. If they are part of security and they're just reading the contents of security related services within Azure, then you're going to assign them security reader role. Similarly, if they are working, let's say they're doing a lot of operations, but they do not want to change any permission of a user, then you'll assign them contributor role. If you want, you can combine or customize these roles using custom role options. So you can create a custom definition and you can define what type of actions a user can perform. Let's say you want to assign a contributor role, you're going to basically attach that role definition, which is nothing but bundle of permissions. You're assigning that bundle of permission into any of these areas, either a user or a group or a service principal. Then you're defining a scope. Where do you want to assign it? Do you want to assign it at a management group level, subscription level, resource group level, or at a resource level? So you're defining the scope of this role assignment as well. Compare Azure RBAC roles to Azure AD roles. Before I do that, let me show you these settings related to roles. So there are two types of roles you can see. One type of role is basically there in Azure Active Directory. So you search for Azure Active Directory over here. Azure Active Directory, you search for this. And now I can basically go to roles over here, roles and administrators. I'll click on this. It takes me to all the roles which are available to me. If I try to see create a new custom role, this option is disabled for me. You can see what all things these roles can do. If I scroll down and if I go to licenses, this is what I showed yesterday as well. So if you click on try and buy, you need to purchase a Azure AD P2 license over here. I'll just add a free trial. So this will run for 30 days and I should be able to assign roles to users using this license. Let me refresh the page. Okay, it will take a few seconds for this to appear. Okay, finally it is here. Now I want to assign this to all the users that I have created earlier. So I want to assign it to this user as well as the Tarun user, which is the admin over here. I want to assign all the roles within this and assign. Now P2 license has been assigned to both the users. It will take a few seconds for it to appear. So you can see both the users have been assigned the Azure AD P2 license. Now once this license is assigned, if I go back to Azure Active Directory and if I go to roles and administrators, after some time you should see custom role option should be enabled. Right now it will take some time. To create a custom role, your organization needs to Azure AD P1 or P2 license. If you want to enable it, you can enable it from this section. So in order to create custom role, you have to use a premium license over here. Okay, so we have already enabled it. It will take a few minutes for it to get working. Now let's say you are an application developer and you want to see or you want to assign yourself that role. So what you can do, you can go to any of these role assignments. So what this application administrator create and manage all aspects of application registration and enterprise application. They can do all of these things. Application developer, they can register application. They can basically work anything related to application development. If I choose this role, I can see assignment option. In assignment, I can add a user. Let's say there's a new user that has joined in my company. Problem solver is the person who is the developer in my company. So what I can do, I can assign this user this role and they will be able to do all the operations related to this role. What are these operations? You can go to description and under description you will see all the permissions which are bundled on this role. So they can basically create anything as an owner. So they can create application as owner and you can work with those applications. They can read basic properties of administrative units. They can also read properties of your applications. So they can do all of these things. So all of these read access and create access is assigned to this role. So based on the role that you're selecting, you'll see different set of permissions. If I go to global administrators, search for global administrator, they are like the king or queen of this entire subscription. So if you go over here and you go to description, you can see how many permissions they have. If you scroll down, they have permission to do anything. So global administrator is the highest role at Azure Active Directory role. All the roles that you see over here, these are called as Azure Active Directory roles. Okay. So this is Azure Active Directory role. The other type of role that you see is at a subscription level. Now if I go to Azure portal, if you click on Microsoft Azure, it will take you to home page. Under this you see subscriptions. I'll go to my training subscription. Within this I can go to IAM, Identity and Access Management. I can go to role assignment. Over here I can see what all roles have already been assigned. I can click on add and I can add a role assignment. Under this role assignment I can select different type of roles. So let's say I want to assign a arc delete role to a user. I'll click on next. I can choose a user or a group. Usually you don't assign roles to users. You're going to assign roles to groups, and based on that these will be assigned to your users. Okay, so you basically assign these roles to groups and then you are going to add users to those groups. That is how you usually assign them. So I'll click on select member and I can select a certain user that has to be assigned this role. So let's say I want to assign this problem solver user as a arc delete role. I can select this, review and assign this. So you can assign role at a subscription level, at a management group level, at a resource group level, or at a Azure AD level. Now this is what it is talking about in this slide. So you can assign two different type of role: Azure RBAC roles, which are assigned at management group level, or at a subscription level, or at a resource group level, or at a resource level. Okay, so these are the roles that you're assigning. Azure AD roles are assigned on the Azure Active Directory level. That is your identity part. Manage access to Azure resources. So you can assign access to Azure resources. It manages access to Azure AD objects. Scope can be specified at multiple levels: management group, subscription, resource group, and resource. Scope is at tenant level. So it is only at the tenant level. So everything is assigned at the same level. You can access information using CLI, PowerShell, or ARM templates, Azure Resource Manager templates, or REST APIs. In this you have more or less similar options, but you do have M365 portal, Microsoft Graph, Azure Active Directory, PowerShell for Graph. So you have all of these options available to you. You also had something called as Classic Administrator. So earlier Azure portal was called as manage.azure.com. Now it is called as portal.azure.com. But earlier it was called as manage.azure.com. At that time you used to use classic roles as well. Those classic admin roles help you to create anything related to classic administration. But now it is not really relevant because most of the resources that you see nowadays have moved into ARM template or ARM method. In classic model you used to have different APIs for all the resources, but in ARM model you have common API. So if you're basically deploying any resource, either storage account, VM, or anything, everything is talking to a common API. In classic administration you used to have different APIs assigned over there. So this is the main diagram that you should remember. You can have different type of roles. You can have Azure Active Directory roles, which are global administrator, application administrator, and other roles which are assigned at this level. Then you have this Azure AD is associated with root. This root is your root management group, and this root is basically added over here. You can have different type of Azure RBAC roles. Owner, contributor, reader, these are related to Azure resource level roles. You can assign it at root management group, at a subscription level, at a resource group level, and you can have all of the same roles assigned at all of these levels. Okay, so this is how you work with RBAC roles. Determine Azure RBAC roles. So based on the role that you choose, you will see different permission. Owner they can do everything within the environment. They are the highest privilege that you might get. Contributor can do anything, but they cannot assign roles to other users. Reader can read everything. they cannot modify anything. So they will be able to see all the resources, but they will not be able to make any changes to those resources. User access administrator, it allows you to basically do anything related to user access. So let's say you want to reset the password of a user, you want to assign licenses to the user, so you are going to assign them user access administrator role. So these are the different default roles available to you, but there are a lot more roles that you can see on Azure subscription.